Welcome, Lauren.
Hey, Lindsay, so good to be on the show. And I don't know if your listeners know, but we did a swap, right? Like I had you on the Conscious Fertility Podcast, and now I'm excited to be your guest on your podcast. So thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. That was such a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking with you. We have such a connection. We talk about consciousness, the subconscious mind. You're also a clinical certified hypnotherapist as well as an acupuncturist. So we definitely we love talking about fertility, how that relates to consciousness and energy. What is your approach to optimizing fertility? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll give an overview, which I know you subscribe to this idea as well, because it comes from our training in Chinese medicine. And the approach I have for reproductive health is nourish the soil before you plant the seed, right?
Mm.
And this comes from this idea, if we use this metaphor, if you had a plant that you neglected and it looked a little dry and withered, rather than composting it, often you can add water to the soil, maybe pull some weeds, a little bit of fertilizer, how much sunlight it's getting. And this plant can regain its vigor and give off fruits and flowers. So this plant always had the potential to give off fruits and flowers, but the environment was suboptimal, so it couldn't reach its potential. In this metaphor, the plant is the egg cell or the sperm cell, and the soil is the environment surrounding the egg cell and the sperm cell. And so when we look to optimize fertility, we're looking, if we carry on this metaphor, your Chinese medicine doctor, for example, is the gardener, and the person in front of us is the garden. And we're looking at things that could be out of balance. Could be their pH, which in the body that could be literally like you're too acidic or alkaline. It could be your hormones are out of balance or you have too much inflammation. The soil could have insects and other critters in there. So that would be like infections in our body, underlying infections. Um, there could be toxins and chemicals. So we think of this as weeds and rocks and literally contaminants. So we'd want to remove that. The microbiome of the soil could be off. Well, our gut microbiome and the vaginal uterine microbiome could be off. Same with the mouth microbiome. It could lack nutrients, so we need to add fertilizer, right? And so that would be diet, supplements, herbs, and our it may not get appropriate sunlight to the plant takes that sun, converts it into energy called photosynthesis. Well, our bodies absorb red and infrared light, and we're going to talk about low-level laser therapy, also known as photobiomodulation, because the mitochondria, the egg cells, absorb that light, and the mitochondria is important for egg quality, right? It's what determines, it helps support the eggs dividing in the fallopian tube or in the IVF lab. And that energy for the mitochondria and the embryo is also important for implantation. So that is kind of my approach. So when somebody comes, there's so many tools that we have available to us, right? As practitioners, there's herbs and acupuncture, low-level laser therapy, supplements, conscious work. There's IVF. There's unlimited, it seems like, things that people can do. But rather, you don't always have to do everything. Like with a garden, you don't have to do everything, right? Sometimes it's just a few things in the environment that's off. So we like to test to see what's the underlying cause, what's the root cause, and then address that. And sometimes we may have to address it with a few redundant approaches. They're not so much redundant, they just need help. So we may go after mitochondria through supplements like coenzyme Q10, through low-level laser therapy, through detoxification, through guided meditation and hypnosis to bring down that stress level because that impacts the mitochondria. And one more metaphor. You'll see, Lindsay, I like to talk in metaphors, but I think of it as like all these different approaches to address your soil imbalances or disturbances. Um, is like a carriage with a horse being ridden to a destination. And so in this metaphor, the fertility journey is having the baby is the destination, and then you're in the carriage, and then the horse is the different modalities. So if somebody came to me unexplained, maybe at 20 years of age, they just may need one horse to get to that finish line efficiently and the carriage one piece. But if you come to me at 40 years old and you may have endometriosis or previously unsuccessful IVF cycles or diagnosed with PCOS, we need to add more horses in order to make sure that carriage gets to the finish line in an efficient amount of time. So one horse could be just diet. Another horse is supplements. Another horse is herbs, acupuncture, low-level laser therapy, IVF. hypnosis. So when somebody comes, we do a full history to see what state their carriage is, what does their journey look like, and how many horses do we need to put on it. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking when I see anybody is, how do I assess their soil? And then what do I need? How many horses do I need to help them get to the goal that they want? So hopefully that kind of explains my approach, because there's many things that people can do. And I always get, can I take this? Should I take this? Should I do that? And sometimes they already have 3 or 4 horses that are taking care of that issue in the soil. Like for mitochondria, they don't need another supplement. I already see they have several supplements. They're doing diet, lifestyle, low level. They're already doing enough. They don't need to add another expense because they pretty much have maxed out what they need to do for the mitochondria. But there may be microbiome issues, something we can use with that. And it's nice when one thing treats many things, like low level laser therapy helps with blood flow. That's like lack of water, right? The dry soil. Acupuncture does that. Low level laser therapy helps with blood sugar regulation, helps with the microbiome, helps with inflammation, helps with mitochondria. So when we really get into talking about LLT, known as photobiomodulation, I like it because its mechanism does so many things to that soil that is beneficial for egg quality and sperm quality and uterine receptivity.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And so my question to you is, this is often something that I talk about, and I want to get your perspective on it because you kind of touched on it earlier, talking about mitochondria, supplements, the horses, and how many horses you need. How do you feel about someone that comes to you that is taking a whole zoo of supplements and is trying to do all these meditations and do all this different work, that it seems like energy, like stress, cortisol overload? How do you have a conversation with them and really be able to kind of cut some of those things out? And how do you, if you feel that's necessary, I'm guessing that you do, that doing too much is also creating that stagnant energy that you had mentioned about with manifesting?
Yeah, well, less can be more, right? And so I meet them where they're at. So, at the time of our recording, I've been practicing over 25 years. So, how I practice now is very different than I did in my first 5 years of practice. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I have this understanding that the body has this innate wisdom to heal. I just got to give a little bit of background how I'm going to answer this. Um, so the body has innate wisdom to heal, and also they're the ones that have to implement everything. And and they do the healing. Even when I do the conscious work, I just facilitate, right? So when somebody comes in, I mean, you get a vibe for it, you get a sense and see what they're doing. And I'll just ask, how do you find taking your supplements? And I love it. It's great. If they're having a lot of bloating and it's really difficult and they're not eating because they're taking supplements, then I'll invite them do you want me to look at your supplements and tell you which ones I think are necessary and which ones may be just redundant, and you may not be making a difference. Also, raise my hand here, those who can't see it. Guilty. Sometimes I forget and I overload them with supplements, and then they come in. I've been seeing them for 2 or 3 months, and I go, just bring in everything you're taking, because yes, I prescribe them stuff, but then they go on the web and and they're seeing other people. Next thing I know, I may be prescribed 6 supplements, right? And then they come in with 20.
Right.
So I'll go, okay, and literally come in with a suitcase. I mean, I remember, so when you ask the question, you gotta own it, right? I'm guilty and
Right.
sometimes too. I remember somebody came in with a suitcase and I go, did I prescribe all that to you? And she goes, yes. I go, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I did that. Okay, let's go through this. Let's change, right?
Love it.
Now, some people come to me like in their mid 40s, at over 45, and they got a lot going on. For 3 to 6 months, we sometimes have to throw a lot of things into their routine to make that change. But it's not something they should be on for years. So sometimes it is, 3 to 6 months of intensive supplements. But like you, I don't like to do that. And it's no different than IVF. Like IVF, let's say it's a 30-day process. You're taking, if you're priming, if you're doing the retrieval, right, you're priming, then you're taking injections, you're taking a lot of medications, a lot of appointments in 30 days, right? but then it's over, and hopefully, it gets you a nice, healthy, genetically screened embryo, right? Normal embryo, euploid embryo. So it's the same thing. It's just, we're looking to improve it. So when we play with the garden, when you're cultivating your garden at the beginning, you're going in and pulling weeds at the beginning before you plant your garden. But after you pull those weeds, you will still need to pull weeds throughout the life of that garden, but not like it was when you first started, right? There's a big cleanup. So, sometimes we have to do that. And, the fertilizer. So at the beginning, you do it and it sprouts, starts to grow. You don't need to you can start to pull back. So that's probably also where I could do better is I get people started, give them lots of supplements. And I've not always been great at saying, hey, you're doing great. We've seen all these changes. Let's see what we can take you off of. And I'm very aware that they are self-prescribing all the time. So, I mean, I do give them some, but I forget that they're also on the web and listening to podcasts, hearing a supplement, and then they're adding it to their repertoire. But the people I see do tell me, and I'm like, I like it. Are you okay taking it? Or I'll say, you don't need it, like it's not necessary. What you're taking here is doing that. So you don't need to add that, you know,
Mhm.
let's put it again. This is coming through me right now as a metaphor. You want your veggies, you're at dinner, and let's say you eat everything, right? So you got a nice healthy piece of grass-fed meat there, beef. You got your some rice there, and you want veggies, and you got, you've been told to eat veggies. So you got some broccoli there, and you got some green beans there, and a little bit of salad. But you're told to eat veggies. Oh, more should be good. So let's also add green beans now. And now let's add some Brussels sprouts. Like, I mean, you don't need to keep adding every vegetable under the sun in that meal, right? You got
Right.
enough vegetables. So it's the same thing with certain supplements. You got it, but they're like, oh, well, that's a supplement and that's good for egg quality. I should take that. So that's where it's just like you're ruining the meal. Like you got enough, you got your plate, you got your carbs, you got your protein, you got your veggies. You don't need to add 3 more veggies to your plate.
Right. But what is your take on that when people are constantly wanting to add new things? Like when we think about the subconscious mind, what would be your advice and maybe that why people are doing that when they're on a fertility journey?
Well, I know why they're doing it. They want to have a baby and they have a
Right.
strong desire and they're looking for anything that will help them have the baby. So, I mean, that's why they're doing it because who wants to spend money on stuff, right? Like you don't have to. So,
Right.
there's that part. So, that's why they're doing it. And then how I work with them is, I mean, I'll give you a real life story. Just it's happened this week. Again, I'm a senior practitioner, so I don't get totally attached to my position either. And I learn a lot from my patients when they bring in certain supplements and I'm like, don't know that. Let me look into it. But I'll give you an example of NAD. It's popular right now. We just released at the time of your recording here, but we released a podcast somewhere in the 90s on NAD. And NAD is important for mitochondrial health. And mitochondria is very important for egg quality. It's very
Right.
important for life, your health. Like every cell, you need mitochondria, but when it comes to fertility, it's important, especially as we age. So she was on a NAD precursor. So I can't remember. I'm not going to list the brand, but it's not actually NAD. It's something that supplies the NAD, right? It's a precursor. And we were like, great, we've heard about it, we like it, we're excited about it, but we hadn't been using the supplement ourselves or doing NAD IVs because my team, my naturopathic doctors, hadn't seen enough science for it, and it's very expensive. And they were concerned there's a pathway that's important. The NAD pathway is very important, and it gets blocked up. And I say it's important, it's the pathway to make NAD because you don't get it from the outside, it's made internally in the cell. The pathway can get blocked up. So the metaphor I was shared with when I was learning about it is you have this machine that does all the processing to make NAD, and you're adding all the materials to do that on this conveyor belt. And everybody's adding these supplements into the conveyor belt, but the machine is broken. So eventually you have this buildup in the conveyor belt and it makes a mess in the body. So my team was concerned about, and we found out this is what's happening. You add sometimes this precursor, but you don't have the good recycling. You feel good at the beginning because you've added support to the NAD. So you have a boost in NAD. So you do feel better. But after weeks or months, it plateaus and then you get worse because you've built up this backlog of stuff. So you're actually causing more harm than good. So the key is to fix the recycling plant. And
Mm.
so we learned there's another supplement out there. And so we recommend that. And I have a blog on that on the NAD. And I said we have a podcast. So we want to help with the recycling plant. And then after being on that for several weeks, you can add some of these materials that are needed for NAD creation, right?
Okay.
So the client patient asked me, her REI put her on the precursor. And I said, personally, I don't recommend it. I'd rather you be on this supplement to help with the recycling before you do that. I'm not saying no to it. I'm saying you can take it after 3 to 4 weeks. And you may not even need to take it. And she was kind of like liking what the REI said. So she goes, but I really want to take it, right? Because the REI suggests I take it. So I just shared, then you can take it. I gave her my information. She has to decide. I'm here to facilitate. I'm here to provide information. She has to listen to her intuition to see what's right. Sometimes maybe for her, that was the right thing. So I give I think young doctors, young egotistic doctors can get really attached to their wait, you got to listen to me. And I feel like I'm here to facilitate and provide you information, and then you have to make that choice. And so when you said, how do I handle that? I had somebody that said, here's my supplements. I said, I'd like you to stop these. Like I want her to stop resveratrol, for example, because it can impact implantation. She was, in this case, there's another person that's doing frozen embryo transfer. So didn't think she needed that. So we went through and took some things out. I added one or two things as well to her thing. Um, and then she had some, why I want this or why I want that. And we just talked about it. And I would say, you can take it. I don't see this as harm. The resveratrol don't take. I do see this would interfere with what our goal is. These supplements, I don't think they won't interfere. I just don't think you need them. But if you like taking them, take them. And that's kind of so it's a discussion. I guess that's how I would answer that. I have a discussion. I tell them what I would like them to take or not to take. They usually will ask why. I give them my reason. I think it's great that they ask why. I don't get offended. They have to sit with it, digest it, figuratively and literally, and then they make their choice.
That is the last thing that we need when someone's trying to conceive a healthy pregnancy, is to create more stress for them. So it's
Yeah.
really important that we
And
support them.
there are times where I have my line, and I'll give an example of this. There's one is, there's certain things where, because we don't know if it's going to make a difference or not. Like there's just things we think, but we don't know. Like there's not great data or research. We're just like not sure. And then there's things where you just know that you have to do it this way, more like the way you practice. For example, when I do my conscious work, the way I currently do it, and I'm always evolving, but I like to have 5 sessions a week apart at the beginning. And then usually they could be done, or then it's just kind of when you need it. I don't want somebody to come in twice and then that's, book two, or come in two and then a month later they do the third. So when somebody sees me for energy psychology after the initial, they're required to book 5. Doesn't mean they'll keep them. They can cancel them, but I know they're committed if they at least set them up. Because if they book only one after, because my schedule gets booked up 2 to 3 months in advance, I know I'm not going to get them in. So we will contact them saying, you need to book 5 in a row, or please cancel this till when you can book 5 in a row. And that's because I know how I work with the conscious work. I want to have momentum, and I want those appointments kind of close together to teach the tools so the individual has the momentum. So after the 5, they are good to go, and they're using the process that we learned together. And then they're just using me here and there for extra help, right? Facilitation. I just know through experience that those that book one they just they don't get good results. It hurts. So it doesn't benefit them for the money they spent and the time they spent. It doesn't benefit me either, because then they say, oh, it didn't work, it was no good, but they didn't do the process. And to put it to our listeners, it's like you do an IVF and you're priming, and they want you to take, the 2 different injections a day for 11 days. And you start with one, and then you're like, you know what, I don't like doing the 2. I'm going to just do one. And then it doesn't work. And you're like, yeah, IVF doesn't work. Well, there is a way to do it, right? So I'm not I am what I would call firm and kind. I'm not wishy-washy. Like the patients don't push me around so they're happy and then they don't get the results. I'd rather you get the results and not like me. So I don't think that I'm not here to make friends with my patients, although we do get along really well, but my energy, and I think people like boundaries. So my patients know I have boundaries. So I'm kind and firm, and there's a balance. So there's some people that are a-holes, right? Practitioners, egos. So I'm not that, you know. Um, and then there's some that are wishy-washy. So, what do you want to do? You tell me, what do you want to, like that, And so I'll have patients ask me, what should I do? And I will give them information so they can make the decision. And I do stay away from telling them what to do because there's many ways to this path, this journey. So obviously I give them a lot of guidance and help them so they can tap into their yes or no. And here, a funny story. I was working with this woman, and she really wanted me to tell her what she should do for this cycle. Like, she had a choice. What should you do? And she goes, I know you don't like to do this, but I want you to tell me what to do. And I go, you're sure? You really want me to tell you what I think? If I were in your shoes, I want you to do what you should do. And she goes, yes. I go, okay. So she had her options. I asked her which one she wanted to do. She wouldn't tell me. She wanted to know what I want her to do. So I told her what I wanted her to do, and she did the opposite anyhow. So, I was like, okay, I'm not, I burned me once. It's like, so for those listening, I don't do it anymore. I was like, at one time I did it, and then obviously, she chose a different way. It was uncomfortable for her, and she canceled everything else we had left because it wasn't the way I wanted her to do it. So but I just, a cute story, right? But I was just like, again, we're your advocate. I have knowledge, I have training, I have experience. And this is the key part. I do trust that there's something inside of you that has a yes and a no as well. So I'm hoping to support you tapping into that. And I definitely guide, I influence. Like it's not like it, like I said, I'm firm and kind. I'm not like leaving it wide open. I'm really helping you narrow it down and really, helping you strategize. I used to be a CPA, a chartered accountant back in the day. And so I have that kind of analytical mind, and I have that idea of planning and strategizing. So I do that with the people I see. And I look for them to find that inspiration answer, and most of them get it. So I definitely lead the witness.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. And people at this point, generally, when we start seeing most of these people, I know in my practice that they've tried everything. They have, I see many, many, many women that are in their 40s, and they have tried everything. And so they're really at that kind of the end of, I don't know what else to do. So at that point, I feel like they really are looking for someone that can direct them versus me, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? Kind of thing. So can you explain, since we're on this subject, because this I feel is really important for people to understand. Um, Maybe if we talk about the conscious work that you do, why is it so important to stay on track with that? Because I don't think people always really understand why we do more than just one session for that.
Yeah, well, we're changing patterns that you have, right? Subconscious programs that um, filter down into your conscious, into your behavior. So it's literally your behaviors are always congruent with your beliefs, your programs, and your behaviors, the actions that you take daily become your habits and then form your destiny. That's a quote from Gandhi, right? Your thoughts, your beliefs become your thoughts become your feelings become your actions, your habits, your destiny. So if you want to change, like simple as losing weight, for example, you can go and diet, but why do you gain all your weight back? Well, you got the overweight program and you're going in on the behavior, trying to change the behavior, but that's a muscle and it will get tired later. You're motivated, you're using your conscious mind to make these changes, but it's not in your subconscious mind. And they say on average, 95% of the time you drift in your subconscious mind. So I'm using weight as an example. 5% of the time I want to be fit and thin, but 95% of the time I'm overweight, not worthy, not pretty, whatever it is, right? So for 5% of the time, you can eat well, exercise, but you keep drifting. And so our work is, why don't we change that subconscious program that says I don't deserve to be fit, or I'm not fit, or I'm not pretty, and make it fit and healthy. So when you drift, you're running the same program with your conscious mind and subconscious mind. And actually, I'd like to share a story actually, because it shows the power of it. Because it's to give it a full logical explanation, which is fair to ask for, and we're doing, is sometimes a story can help make it land better. So this was a woman and I share this story because it's my favorite story to show how much changing your program can make a difference. She had come to my practice diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So she had fatigue, she was sore, and she was experiencing depression. Comes into my practice. I put needles at her acupuncture, and I like acupuncture even from a clinical hypnotherapist perspective because it induces that relaxation response, alpha. So it helps you get into the operating system when your amplitude of your brainwaves is more on the alpha than the high beta, alpha theta. It's really nice to work on the operating system, your subconscious. So in her session with her needles in, we did a little timeline hypnotherapy work. And so we sent her back in time when she was healthy and asked her what it was like. So she got to see, hear, smell, feel when she was healthy. And then we had her forward paced 5 years from now, as if it was happening now, because that's key in subconscious work, hypnosis. It has to be in the present moment. So she was imagining 5 years from now as if it's happening now. And in it, she noticed her posture, how her posture was different. She noticed she had a different hairstyle. She noticed how she breathed. When she walked by a mirror, she saw her reflection. So she saw the clothes she was wearing and how she looked. And then she started noticing her gait, how she was walking. Then she commented on what people were saying. Damn, you look good. Shit, what have you done? You look so good. What have you changed? And then she had her inner voice talking to herself, what she was saying about herself, right? And then she kinesthetic physically got in there and just felt what it felt like to be so healthy, with mobility, good mood, flexibility. That was our session. She comes back for our next session and she shares that she's really sore. So this was years ago. So I'm running the program imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. So as soon as she said she's really sore, I thought I did it. My treatment was terrible. So that's I went into my program. I'm not good enough. But then she went on to share that she joined a gym, and that's why she is sore. She just started. Now, two key things I want to bring out about this. One is exercise. Most people are aware now that exercise is good for depression and fibromyalgia to move the circulation. It helps. I never said to do exercise. What we did in her sessions, what I call setting your GPS, setting the destination. We're not telling her how to do it. Just like in GPS, you don't set the GPS and then start to try and program turn left, turn right? You just set the GPS, then it tells you what to do. And if you take a different turn than the GPS, it just says recalculate and it keeps you on the destination. So one thing is, I never said she should exercise. That was not one of the things I told her to do in the session. We just set her GPS, but she went and chose to join a gym to do exercise. So that part was cool. Most people are like, yeah, not enough to sell me on your hypnosis stuff idea, but I have to bring up that was cool. Here's the cool part, the unexplainable part. She walks to work every day, and that gym is on her route to work. So twice a day, 5 days a week, she walks by that gym. And she's had this job for a couple of years. So she's walked by that gym over 1,000 times. After our session, she had the inspiration to go in and join the gym. That's where I say your behaviors are always congruent with your programs. The subconscious GPS, the GPS that we set, we told the subconscious, this is who I am. This is who I'm, not who I'm going to be. This is who I am. And the subconscious wants congruency. And if the subconscious believes I'm overweight, I'm not pretty, nobody likes me, then it will want congruency and it will sabotage going to the gym, eating well, and all that other stuff. But if the subconscious says I'm beautiful, I'm fit, I'm deserving, then it's going to look for those opportunities, because those opportunities, like that gym, those opportunities are always there. But your subconscious sees everything that's in its view, ears and eyes, but your conscious mind can only take in so much information. And so as soon as she changed the program, then it filtered into her conscious, and she made that inspirational choice to join the gym. So I thought that story would explain it well. And when you say, why is it so important? Because when you have resistance in your system, when you're fighting with reality and you have these programs, like when I do my history, it's quite often the couple common things that come up. One is they always knew they were going to have trouble getting pregnant. They share this like since they were, and they either don't know why, or they actually have an incident with something happened in their life or in a medical situation that they knew they were going to have trouble getting pregnant. So that comment comes up quite regularly. And then there might have been a really horrific birth that their mother had, or they already had one, or somebody. So there's something around that unconscious fear or conscious, or some other program that's running. So we usually uncover, make the unconscious conscious, find that program. Because when I use the word resistance, in the West we call it stress. Chinese medicine we call it qi stagnation. Fertility is all about flow and receptivity. And my episode on my podcast, on the Conscious Fertility Podcast, Randine Lewis talked about flow and receptivity, a whole episode on it. But flow and receptivity is important for life and really important for fertility, flow and receptivity. And when you have resistance, that kind of blocks the flow and receptivity. And by lowering the resistance, you now have flow and receptivity, which is important for fertility. So how does this come in with the subconscious programs? Well, if you think of an electrical system, we are chemical electrical beings. When there is resistance in an electrical system, we know the energy doesn't flow so well and it can overheat the system. But when the resistance drops, the energy flows better. And same thing for us. When we have flow and receptivity, we function well and we feel good. And when we have resistance, we get qi stagnation, and that can develop into discomfort, pain, and even disease. And so much of your thoughts are creating resistance constantly. You have a conflict between your subconscious and your conscious, and you're at the effect of the external world that's constantly creating resistance. My own personal experience that helped me on this journey is I always had underlying anxiety, even though everything in the external world was great, even though I knew so many things, I'm trained in, the health profession, I always had this low level anxiety. And then it got debilitating. I couldn't understand, what's going on because I didn't have, at least people have a reason. This is why I have anxiety. I couldn't find the reason. And then through this work, I've been able to resolve, metabolize it, and not have that, or rarely have it. So I get that resistance because it was like I'd be meditating. I'm like, what is that? Like, like it just couldn't, only once in a while could I get to pure peace or profound peace. And when you've had profound peace or peace, you know what it feels like. Most people are running some form of resistance. So if it goes to 10 to 0, I could be at back, meditating, getting down to a 2. And when I got quiet, I was like, what is this hum in my body, right? Because I had experienced 0. I know what that feels like. And that's where miracles can happen. And so the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, the intention is to share with people how they can get themselves down to that 0, not just the 1. And then the body's healing works. And I'll add one more left brain understanding of this is when your body has resistance, we call it qi stagnation or underlying stress. It doesn't feel safe. And so your energy, your resources get mobilized for survival. So not as much resources are available for reproduction, healing, and creativity. And when you lower the resistance, move that qi stagnation, go into peace mode, so you feel safe, your body on a cellular level feels safe, then that frees up the resources for healing, for creativity and reproduction. So that's why this is so important, because the body has an innate ability to heal and to know when to release, to build the estrogen, the hormones from the brain, the FSH to the ovaries, the estradiol going back to the brain, the LH, progesterone, and then all the other sex hormones and different oxytocin and dopamine. There's an orchestra going on, and we can disturb that through our thoughts and feelings and through our underlying programs. And so we want to help the body do what it's able to do. And that's why this work is so important, in my opinion. And I think you agree with that as well, based on knowing you.
It's super powerful. I would probably some of that go more on the woo-woo side. I know that that's how I am,
Yeah.
but I love your perspective. Absolutely. I definitely love integrating science and more of that logical side of things as well. I think that goes nicely into the energy of more of that kind of unseen, unexplainable energy. They can definitely tie together. But I would say that with your client that worked with you on weight loss and going to the gym, I would call that synchronicity. So she would actually have been able to, very similar to what you were saying, that the subconscious mind, once we free things up, then we see things differently, right? But to me, I would say the universe was giving you the opportunity to be able to, you've opened a door essentially. So it was a synchronistic event that opened a door for you to see things differently. So everything is, that's what I love about energy and just different perspectives. You can look at things differently and they are very similar. But
I
it's,
got to give you a woo woo story then, because you talked about
yeah, give it.
synchronicity. I got to give you one. You'll like this. I can go woo woo. Just, I'm a bachelor of science in math, chartered accountant. It's just my left brain. And my patients like the sciencey. I can go woo woo. As you know from my podcast, the people I've interviewed.
Right.
So here's one for you. So I had somebody that multiple IVF failures, multiple. The end of the story is she had a baby girl naturally, by the way. And we used low level laser therapy, herbs. We did a whole bunch on the physical, and we did conscious work. But at one point, she had a decision to make, and she wasn't sure what to do. And either way, there was no. Sometimes there is no. We don't know what the right way is until you do it, right? And so she had a big decision, and I said, so we've done the conscious work. She's tuned in. Do you want to ask for a sign? Do you want to get a sign? She goes, yeah. And I go, all right, what sign would you like? And if you get the sign though, will you, could I do this or that? You don't mess with the universe. Like if you ask for a sign and it gives you a sign, you don't back down on what the sign is. So are you sure that if it gives you a sign, you're going to follow that sign, even though your mind's going to get involved again and want to doubt it? That often happens, right? She goes, I promise. I go, I'm telling you, don't mess with the universe. So what do you want for signs? So she tells me her sign. I think it was flamingos, something like pink flamingo. Right? So I was like, whatever. So I was like, where's she going to see that? We're living in Vancouver, but go for it. Anyways, I'm going to try and get her on to tell her story. I can't remember if she walked into this hotel and when she walked in, there was a big pink flamingo, or somebody had a birthday next door and they put a bunch of pink flamingos in their yard. But the pink flamingo came. Like it was like, are you kidding me? So she went that way and everything worked out really well. So I can go what you call woo woo as well. Because I know I teach my clients through my conscious work is that's what I think we're doing. I'll give you all the science, but they say, what do you think you're doing? What do you think's happening? I go, I can't prove it, but I think you're tapping into your higher self. That's much more powerful than your human self. There's another aspect of yourself that will give you inspired answers. And my whole approach is to teach you how to tune into it.
I absolutely, absolutely love that. And we could probably do 3 or 4 different episodes because we could have conversations forever about this stuff. And we very much are aligned in that we have a lot of the same beliefs and directions. I think that we're going in our work. I've had an awful lot of clients since COVID that have had long symptom COVID or have also had vaccine damage relating to egg quality as well as sperm, and it causing some obstacles with their fertility journeys. And they have been able to identify that that's where it could be coming from. So different markers and things like that. So I'm sure that you're aware of this. Have you had any success with working with the low level laser therapy with people that have had COVID damage, whether it be vaccine or with the virus itself?
Yeah. So we've seen long COVID and we've seen people that go into that autoimmune like state, highly inflamed, high histamine state. The common symptoms. So the answer is yes. And we use, and it's integrative. It's not just laser. They're on a good whack of supplements, high doses, sometimes a certain fish oil. So they're on a whack of supplements. I've done acupuncture herbal as well with them. And the common complaint that I have seen and that we have seen resolve with our treatments is using low-level laser therapy and brain fog, peripheral neuropathy, and pain. and anxiety. So those are the three common things that I have seen with long COVID. Whether it was triggered through I've only seen two or three that were triggered by the vaccine. After the vaccine, they within 2 weeks they had all these symptoms. Majority of them have been long COVID, but regardless, your body's been put into an inflammatory. Think of it as an inflammatory state, and the low level laser therapy has been beneficial. So I do use it. I will share with people because, I haven't seen a lot, and it was in the early days. Like anything with low level laser therapy or anything I see that's acute and pain that's even turned to chronic, you're looking at 3 or 4 treatments a week for a couple of weeks, and then you can start to bring it down a bit. And that's always been my approach: is get the momentum going, support the body. So even when somebody comes in with like a chronic back pain or acute injury, I always want to see those kind of people, long COVID, minimum 3 times a week for 3 weeks. And then I can see whether we can bring it down to 2 or once a week. It doesn't help to start it once a week. And if it doesn't work after 2 weeks, increase it. You really got to go at it with a little bit of aggressiveness. And same thing with my fertility. The way I practice, I usually want people to be coming twice a week. Sometimes they're difficult, complicated, 3 times a week. Anne-Marie Jensen, she likes the 3 times a week. But minimum twice a week is my style for the acupuncture and laser. Energy psychology, Peta Stapleton, who did some EFT research, I think in her study, they were doing it twice a week over 4 weeks. So I tend to do it once a week. Twice a week probably would be more beneficial at the beginning as well. But I'm just so busy, I can't get people in. So it's not a great reason, but it's one of the reasons I do it once a week, the conscious work. And also I give people resources between each visit. So it gives them a chance to read, watch, and implement a little bit of what we've done until we have the next session. So it gives them a chance to kind of play with the material that we're learning together. So that is usually once a week, my energy psychology conscious work. Anything else, I usually want somebody to start twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, for a period of 4 weeks or longer before we start to reduce the frequency down. So my message is dosage matters when it comes to acupuncture. And some of my success stories are people coming from other colleagues, acupuncturists, and they're saying I'm pretty much doing the same thing they did for acupuncture, but they did once a week or every other week, and I'm doing 3 times a week. And in 2 weeks, they have significant change because of dosage. So the other person was doing the right treatment. It just wasn't at the right dosage. And for our listeners, think of Clomid or IVF drugs. Clomid, some people can take 25 milligrams up to, more than 100 milligrams. But if you took 1 milligram of Clomid, even though you took it for 5 days, or letrozole, and you didn't ovulate, they wouldn't say it was the letrozole or the Clomid issue. They would say it was the dosage issue.
Couldn't agree with you more on that. I think consistency is really powerful, and making sure that you are getting the dosage that you need. And I love that we've talked a lot about this today, because that is something that I often see as well, is that people are not getting the care that they need. And it's not that the other practitioner is doing something wrong. It's just maybe that they're just not, maybe they don't feel comfortable necessarily with saying you need to come more often, because I know sometimes people can feel uncomfortable with actually being that transparent, because, well, what if the patient or the client doesn't want to do that? And so that goes again back to what you were talking about in the beginning of not being necessarily, you're the nice guy, but you're not trying to be friends with them either. You're giving them what they really
I
need.
tell them this is what you need. And if you want this goal, then this is what, it's no different. Like I see a lot of teachers, if your student says, I want an A+, and you say, I want you to study 3 times a week for the next 3 weeks. And they say, how about I study once a week? They go, well, you can do that, but that doesn't mean I don't know if you'll get the A+, right? Like, so you can do that. So it's the same thing. I tell them, they go, what if? And I go, well, you've asked for, this is your goals. And I can't even promise you if it's going to work if we do it this way. So I wouldn't do less. I just like to get the momentum, reminding that the body has innate healing response. So if we're able to help create that environment and play with the soil, then when we pull away the herbs and some of the supplements and the frequency of acupuncture and laser, it's supposed to hold, right? It's supposed to hold and continue to get better because we play the environment. If I pull the weeds out, I don't need to keep coming and doing something because the weeds are gone. It can do it, but I need to go in and get my hands dirty and pull the weeds. And so same thing, I need to get in and play with the soil, and I need that dosaging, that time for 3 months, maybe, right, at twice a week or 3 times a week. I need that to make the change in the soil. And then the body does what it needs to do because it has its innate ability to heal. It just didn't have the environment to support it to do what it needs to do.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the beauty is it's short term. You have to do it, and patients have to choose because there's time and money and other things that are involved. So they have to decide. We just tell them what we've seen has worked clinically, and so that's what we share. And I mean, we're biased. We have financial gain for them to come in 3 times a week versus once a week. So I get from the patient's perspective, it's is this in my best interest or is it in your best interest? So I get it. Most of the research shows more than once a week, and so that's what we try and follow. And most clinical experience is more. I have on my other company, Healthy Seminars, somebody's going to share about acupuncture peripheral neuropathy. It's amazing, very hard to treat, but acupuncture is very good for peripheral neuropathy. We have some research on this, but one of the key things was dosage. If you didn't have the
Mm.
right dosage times in a week, you didn't get the effect.
Right, absolutely. I always tell people that it's almost like you're chasing it. You have to chase after it to get it, kind of like pull it in, you can't, because the body will go back. And it's that way with any of these therapies that we've talked about today. It will go back to its old patterns. And so you have to chase after it until you get it under control and you've got that harmonized balance. And so consistency, coming in as much or doing sessions wherever you're doing them, whether virtually, to make sure that you're getting the care that you really need. And I always tell people too that maybe seems expensive, but if you are seeing someone for a shorter amount of time and really getting the results that you're looking for and deserve, then that makes it actually less expensive than if you're seeing someone for years and years and years and you're really not getting the results that you need. So it's about quality. It really is about quality. And so I
Yeah.
try to explain it in that way to
Yeah,
people
no,
as well.
that's a good point how you do it. If you're coming for, I want this result, then you share what it looks like. And then if you're just coming for a spa treatment, which I have, they just come in for relaxation, then people just come in every once in a while because I just want to relax. Just,
Hmm.
so I have those treatments as well, but these people aren't trying to get pregnant anymore. They're just coming in and they want to chill. And then patients come in for perimenopause and menopausal symptoms. Been in this practice so long that most of the people I've seen are now at that age of 45 beyond, right? And so, same thing. We do 2 or 3 treatments a week on average for several weeks on herbal. Get the night sweats, hot flashes, irritability from a 9 to a 3, and then we pull back the acupuncture. Pull back the acupuncture. They usually stay on the herbs for a good 6 months, but we're able to really pull back the acupuncture. But we do go aggressively for the first 4 to 6 weeks. So
Mm.
same thing like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Lauren, this conversation today was absolutely incredible. I know that you definitely spent more time with us than we originally had scheduled. So I really appreciate that. Great conversation. But before we go, I know that you have a free gift or download for the listeners, and maybe you can talk a second about that, as well as how people can find you. I'm going to put it in the show notes, but you can also, if you want to talk a little bit about that before we go, I think that would be really great.
Thanks, Lindsay. So you can find me. There's a Conscious Fertility Podcast. We're on Instagram, Conscious Fertility Podcast. I'm Lorne Brown Official on Instagram, and we have my Acubalance Wellness Center there as well. I'll have my team send that to you for the show notes, and we have our websites also under those names, Acubalance Wellness Center. The free download, because you asked, is there anything I wanted to give them? And we love to give the fertility diet. So we have the Acubalance fertility diet that has diet and recipes for those to enjoy. We also have an ebook on 5 ways to maximize your chance of getting pregnant. And you can also ask us for a little meditation I've done to kind of create heart-brain coherence to kind of help you tap into that intuitive side of yourself. More importantly, just to get you into that rest and digest parasympathetic. So that's available, and you can get that by just going to acubalance.ca. A pop-up will happen when you go to acubalance.ca, and if it doesn't, email us because maybe we've taken it off when you're listening to this recording, but right now it's there. Acubalance.ca, that's with 1C. A pop-up will come and it will give you an opportunity to download for free the diet ebook, and I think in there it should send you to our blog links where that meditation is as well. And we have tons of blogs on the website on laser therapy and conscious work.
That's great. Well, you definitely have a wonderful podcast. There is so much wonderful information on there, as well as the people that you have on, your guest. I know that it's definitely an integration of the science with the energy, and that's so incredible. I'm such a huge proponent of that. I couldn't agree with you more on so many things. So, anybody that's listening, definitely check out Lorne's podcast
Yeah.
because
And Lindsay, check out her episode. It's on the Conscious Fertility Podcast. So thanks for being a guest on my podcast. I appreciate that.
yeah,
It was fun. It was good
absolutely.
stuff that you shared.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Lauren. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day. And we really appreciate you being on Fertile Frequencies podcast.
Thank you.